Posted. Again, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the morning Soto service and also the Dharma talk. Today, we have the pleasure of listening to Unsen Sangaku Dan Joslyn. Sensei Sangaku Dan Joslyn is the Silent Thunder Order novice. He's not a novice priest now. He actually we need to update your bio, sir. I pulled this offline. So he's actually a fully transmitted priest that he went through his Susho ceremony last year, 2020. So we're going to update that. But he is a practice, Mokyo is also his practice leader of the Falmouth Sangha, but he is the guiding teacher of the Falmouth Sangha up in Massachusetts. Sensei also works with drug and alcohol counseling and engaging senior citizens in learning meditation. He is available to speak on the history of Buddhism and Zen and their role in everyday life. Please, with the Big God Show, welcome Sensei Sangaku Dan Joslyn. He's going to be speaking with us this morning about change. And again, we are so welcome to have him. And I want to give also Hojo Sensei the opportunity to say if there are any other items that you wanted to say about Sensei Dan Joslyn.
Sangaku was here in Atlanta for many years, I don't know how long, with his wife, Susan, who is a psychiatrist. And they partially retired and moved to Falmouth. And I've been up there, I think, once or twice. I was up there in time for a big hurricane one time. That was fun. And he was our prototype. We'd helped several startups up until that point, but we'd never done it as kind of a considered process. So with Sangaku, knowing his retirement and moving to Falmouth was coming up, we put together sort of the prototypical, how do you start up a new Zen Center? And he and I worked on that together, but Sangaku made it all happen. And we developed the basic approach for anyone who's gone through training to start up a new group. And his, I think, was the quickest, the most successful, the least problematic. He may differ with me on that. But of all of the ones that we have tried in the past, several of which have failed, by the way. But we now have a fully functioning center in Falmouth, and any of us who are traveling up that way to the Northeast Coast, I'm sure you'd be welcome to join them. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Sangaku. Sangaku means the three teachings. He may be telling you more about the meaning of his name.
Thank you, Fusat. Thanks, Sensei. I'd like to begin by saying Happy Founders Month to everyone. Founders Month is a wonderful event. Not so sure I would say it's the most important event, but it's like a car. What is the most important part of a car? Tires, engine, so forth and so on. Founders Month is integral to what we do. It is integral to us as an order, Mokurai or Silent Thunder Order. It's integral to what we do in terms of our understanding of ancestors and lineage. It is a vital component of those things that we celebrate each year in the Silent Thunder Order. So my talk today, and by the way, I placed something in the chat, which is an earlier Dharma talk I gave several weeks ago to our Sangha, looking at the interrelationship of the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha going all the way back to Sakyamuni Buddha. It's not long, so don't worry, and kind of going through the different stages we've gone through. So for those of you in Atlanta, Fusats, if you would be kind enough to make that available to people who are not on Zoom, I would appreciate it.
Yep, and Sensei, I will do that. I will link that to the talk today, and also
Sure.
We'll put it on the website. And before you get started, can we do the opening Dharma verse? I always forget that, but I just want to allow you to do that.
Of course, of course. Bells, please.
Sensei, do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
the unsurpassed,
Unsurpassed and
profound, and
profound
wondrous
and wondrous
Dharma
Dharma
is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth.
Consider everything I said before the Tathagata's truth to be true. I was talking a little bit about, last time I spoke to Atlanta was in September of last year, so it's been about 14 months. Atlanta was very involved, actually, in November of last year when we had two major events in our Sangha. One was Moko Nancy Sherwood took Taike Tokudo, became a disciple, and then 4 months later became practice leader, as Fusatz mentioned. I still function as a guiding teacher. It is very interesting to me that we have come so far. And looking at Hojo, I think I've come a very little way. Looking at Hojo, I realize how far he's come. I realize without him that I wouldn't be here today, nor would any of you. Simple as that. As a result of that, I have developed, I think, really in the last couple of years, a great affinity for ancestors and the meaning of our lineage and our ancestors in Soto Zen Buddhism. And of course, I gravitate to Masaoka Roshi and his teaching since 1939 for us in the US, and to Hojo Michael Elliston Roshi for his carrying on of that teaching. It was in 2007 that 2006 when Hojo published both books about the teachings of Matsuoka Roshi and the Kawasaku and the Mokurai. And in that book, in the introduction, he talks about the importance of doing so. And one of the things he says very poignantly is, I wanted this to be archival. I wanted this to be what my teacher said from what I remember. It's like an Ananda-like statement. As you recall, Ananda was gifted with the ability to understand each word spoken by the world honored one, by Sakyamuni Buddha. And in the introduction, Hojo mentions that. It's most important because as you read both books, you see a rather direct ability to interpret something from Japanese to English that is so viable, and a result of that simplistic language, I think, has rubbed off. I think it's rubbed off on Hojo, by the way, in his wonderful new book, but I think it's rubbed off on many of us that follow his teachings. As a matter of fact, Masaoka Roshi said, it is the simplicity of this one to another, this sharing one to another, simple, direct, silent mountain sitting, boom, boom, there. With the establishment of the Silent Thunder Order in 2010, Hojo established two things of importance. One is the order itself. We are of the order when we take Zaikai Tokudo. When we become a disciple, we are a disciple in the order of Buddha, named Mokurai or Silent Thunder. Secondly, there is an affiliation that we have of people who are not in Atlanta, and this is referred to as affiliate sanghas. An affiliate sangha, by our general definition, and this varies and is under some review, is a person who leads a particular sitting group, sangha, center, who has been taught by someone who has been transmitted in the Silent Thunder order. Transmitted means a fully transmitted priest, someone taking Shiho. I want you to understand the gravity of that. 95% of all individuals that have taken Tokido, maybe more like 97%, maybe even a little bit higher, have had Hojo-san as the guiding teacher. Let that sink in for a moment. There are only two now centers other than Atlanta that have transmitted priests. Zenku, Jerry Smyers, in Dayton, Montana, Mission Mountain Zen, and our Sangha with me as its guiding teacher in Falmouth, Massachusetts. The weight, importance, and unshakable approach that Hojo has taken in this regard is beyond laudable. Some 5 years ago, a recommendation was made that the month of November be put aside as a month of consideration. A month of consideration for our ancestors and our lineage. Primarily a way of going back and looking at the teachings of Matsuoka Roshi more thoroughly. There were suggestions made by the Silent Thunder Order Board of Directors that a series of things could be done, but it was left up to each individual practice leader in a Sangha to say how they might want to celebrate with all of us in an asymmetrical way the meaning of our root teacher, the meaning of the person who made it all possible. I'm going to be talking about change today, and most of my talk about change is going to focus on wayfinding. A wayfinding talk is when, someone taking Jukai or Zaikai, Shikai, Shike, or have been Shusho or taken Shiho, speak to a congregation about how they get there. How did you get there from here? Well, those of you who are not in the Northeast, I will give you a koan. So this guy walks up to this Mainer, Mainer is somebody from Maine, and says, how do I get to this place from here? And the Mainer says, you can't get there from here. Now, a few years ago, I came up with a commentary on that. You can't get there from here. So my commentary is, however, if you go over yonder, you can get there from there. So I know all of you will be up late tonight, and feel free to call Hojo if you want a thorough investigation, or Moko or Mokuo. You can't get there from here, but if you go over yonder, you might be able to get there from there. The idea of change. In the original frontier, Hojo talks about the permanence of impermanence, or the interconnectivity as being impermanent. And I would add to that, what happens when you are at the crossroads of impermanence and interrelatedness? I suggest to you that that is being time, Uji. The crossroads of impermanence and interrelatedness. Change is our perspective, as Hojo points out in the original frontier. It's our perception of what is happening. Later in his book, or earlier in his book, he talks about his dad's looking at the idea of change, and I can appreciate it now as I've grown older. He said it was like being on a merry-go-round, and all of a sudden it's getting faster and faster. Now, I seem to remember as I was young that the speed of the merry-go-round was second only to the speed of light. I thought it was a fast thing. But I do remember taking it in my stride, that it seemed nothing particular. Yet, the last time I was on one of those things, it was a small one, and it was going mighty fast. So this leads me to what I refer to as the 3 leaving homes. If continuity is a byproduct of the crossroads or the intersection of impermanence and interconnectivity, we, in the process of impermanence and interconnectivity, also celebrate continuity. But this continuity is different from what I would refer to as a relay race, where someone passes a baton from one to another. The baton is lifeless. It has nothing in and of itself other than a placid connectivity between runners seeking a record. However, for us as practitioners, it is seminal. During my week of Shiho, I had to several times a day recite our male lineage and female lineage. It became rhythmical. The names became somewhat familiar, although I have to confess to all of you, my short-term memory now is not what it used to be. And I'm finding that Japanese is not one of my strengths in terms of remembering how things are said. But in that process, these were not wooden batons. These were not people that were non-existent, but rather existed when I simply called out their name. Just as if I call out my mother's name, I see her, I remember her, I have a sense of her. How does this become instilled, you might ask, in us? It doesn't. We find it just as we find the other things in Zen. It is not by looking, but by being open. Shamatha, awareness of awareness. When we are thus, such, in Mo, it is quite different. It's like the ancestors are running with us, right beside us. Something out of Chariots of Fire. Those of you remembering that old movie. Hojo mentions change 103 times in the original Frontier. Now, I didn't count them, but this is a wonderful thing about having Kindle. I can pop Kindle in there and it shows up 103 times. Wonderful in the way that that works. In Kowasaku, Oroshi mentions cause and effect 6 times and has an entire chapter on cause and effect. One of the things he said, and I'll say this first, and I'll go back to a technique that Hojo Elliston Roshi used. He said he referred to his understanding as original nature. The original nature. In some ways, original nature is different from human nature or Buddha nature. Buddha nature is a perspective, and we refer to it, and it is a teaching means, but even that has to drop away in our ultimate understanding of our understanding. Original nature. In Hojo's book, he explored that original nature. There was a technique that Hojo used in Mokurai where he underlined certain words. I must confess, I hadn't noticed that until a recent reading. One of the words that were underlined several times was this, which reminds me of one of the stories that Hojo likes to share about Orochi. When asked, what does this mean? He would oftentimes say, it depends. Or what is this? An answer might be, it depends. Conditions and variables are about their work. And the work that they're about is non-permanence on a micro level, which means change. But that might be oscillation, vibration. Each of the eyes, each of the khandhas, skandhas have their own way of being aware. So as we look at the three different kinds of leaving home, I suggest I left home with Jukai. I left home because when I took Jukai, I acknowledged 5 vows, which made me somewhat different. And I left home, but not physically, but in terms of my awareness. There was a second leaving home when I left Atlanta for Falmouth in 2010. I'd been in Atlanta studying with Hojo for 5 years and then moved to Falmouth, as Hojo pointed out, in terms of a retirement function. I gathered my last paycheck at 71, so I didn't quite retire. My wife is retiring this coming March, and she's a little bit older than 71. My third leaving home was when I took Shuso. When I became transmitted, I was no longer relating primarily to the expectations and overarching teaching of my teacher. Rather, my appreciation, thankfulness is even more. But now, I am in Falmouth now. Just as Hojo left Chicago for Atlanta and Orochi left Chicago for Long Beach, and just as Bodhidharma left India for China, we all go through these moments. One moment this, one moment that. A football player who was recently traded from one football team to another said, I went to sleep on a team that was 4-4 and woke up on a team that was 7-1. So I want to talk to you about not only leaving home and being in this place that I am now, but to give a kind of a wayfaring talk about our Sangha. Sensei's always been very kind with talking about how we set up, actually he and I set up, and talked about for a couple of years the implications of the growth of the teachings of Matsuroku Roshi. When I received Zaikei Tokudo, we did not have a Silent Thunder order as such. But here in Atlanta, we do. Here in Falmouth, we do. In Jacksonville, we do. In Dayton, we do. Chattanooga, we do. So I want to talk to you just about one Sangha, Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha, and what we have become and how it relates back to everything we've talked about relative to, if I wasn't here, the people from Falmouth on this Zoom talk would not be either. So the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha was also founded in November. So we celebrate our Founders Month celebration, founding of our Sangha, and the founding of my order, of Moko's order, of everyone's order. It is a wonderful time. And I'm sure you might have noticed that it is in the month of November, which has something called Thanksgiving. It's a month of gratitude. Although for those of you who come up to visit sometimes in November, we'll take you to the Wampanoag parade in Plymouth, which is quite different from the Plymouth parade regarding Plymouth Rock. My point is that this Sangha, like all Sanghas, has evolved over the last 11 years now. We've done many things and have gone down several roads. We had to turn around and come back. And I don't think the Sangha made any mistakes, but I know I have. So our Sangha, the Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha. I think of us as a boundless center in the sense that our evolution has not been to establish a physical center. Cost prohibits that. We are a small congregation, Sangha, 10 people, upwards to 14 maybe. And we have been in only one location for 10 years now. We're in our second. More central to the city of Falmouth. Our accommodations are equal to what we had. And we are in a welcome place and are able to do the things we did before. But it is new for us. We're going through that change as well. We're going through the change of a practice leader, someone other than me for a while. And as a result of that, my role as guiding teacher now is to develop our practice path, to follow the guidance of my teacher, and do so in a way that will enable the different roles we play as a Sangha and my roles as a teacher to be fulfilled. So we are about Sangha, teaching, and outreach. Sangha. Our Sangha is very interesting. We're men and women, about 50-50. And in our approach to Jukai, each person has about 10 months of training with Jukai. And we have a practice path set up for just Jukai training. Pretty straightforward. And we'll have our 13th Jukai on November 20th. At that time, everyone currently involved, with the exception of one wonderful guy, has taken Jukai. So in this regard, we adhere to pretty much the practice path that has been laid out by Hojo-san. In this regard, the Sangha also, though, has one thing it does. At the end of the celebration, it announces, or that person announces rather, what they are going to do for the Sangha. We have a variety of skill sets, and people give those skill sets to the Sangha from that point on, not to be taken advantage of, but to meld with what we're doing. We have fire chiefs who are Tenzos. We have Navy veterans who are mindfulness teachers on a federal level. We have special ed teachers who carry this innate ability or this great ability into helping people in recovery. Librarians, Department of Justice retirees. We have quite an interesting group, just as I was noticing the group there in Atlanta. It was like the tip of the iceberg, Hojo. As I watched the Zendo, I noticed a lot of people moving around. Someone might even be sitting in my old seat. My old seat, by the way, my old cushion, as you walk through the Dharma gate into the Zendo, and you turn to your left and walk to the far row, my seat was the second one from the end. When I first started sitting there, the guy to my left was a MARTA bus driver. When we got there for 6 o'clock morning meditation, he was always there. I never knew if he was going on or coming off work. That didn't really matter whether he was coming or going. He was sitting zazen. So Sangha. I mentioned a little bit about teaching as well, and our intent is to, through the help of Hojo and my Dharma brothers and sisters, is to develop our practice path over the years as we have the need to do so. So our practice path currently has an outline of going all the way through Shiho, as does the Silent Thunder Order Atlanta Soto Zen Center practice path guide. Yet ours will be somewhat different as I get into the outer ranges of that teaching. At the same time, a lot of that teaching has some influence from the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, particularly the ethics and moral section. And then the third is outreach. I mentioned Boundless Center in that we have found that most of our work is out in the community, that is going into the community, delivering our sharing opportunities to others. And we find that in several areas. So let me mention those, if I may. Recovery community on Cape Cod is strong. We are involved in the recovery community in terms of at least two ways that I can talk about. One is that people within our Sangha come and want to know about how we teach Zen. We go out into the recovery communities in terms of different places, meetings, we go into halfway houses, we offer meditation, Zazen teaching, which I have been doing now for 5 years at both the women and men's, and we're about to start up again at a new co-ed facility. Secondly, we have become more engaged with senior citizens. Our village has 30,000 people, 10,000 of them are 65 or older. So it is our audience. We have two audiences, which we gravitate to and gravitate to us. A week from this coming Monday, we are going to present to, well, hopefully a large group, the meaning of Buddhism and Zen. We already teach on Tuesdays there, and the number of people on the roll right now is 28. These are important because it encourages us as a Sangha to be more active. And as I mentioned to Hojo, in some ways I feel like a parish priest. And I find that fits me well. The other area is the interfaith group of Falmouth, which is made up of 15 different clergy representing 15 different churches rather, and synagogues and sanghas in the area. We're the only Sangha. So we will be involved more in that. The congregational church where we now have our Zendo is most helpful in this regard. They see themselves as a congregation of the community, a fascinating history of that particular denomination. We will also continue to work with sister Sanghas and with the Silent Thunder Order Network as we go into 2022. And one of the most important things about that for me is that I will be working as requested and needed as a senior teacher in our order. The Abbott's Advisory Council is made up of brown robes, and as a result, we have the opportunity to discuss our lineage. Recently, Hojo and I had the opportunity to talk about our lineage with some representatives from the Soto Zen Buddhist Association. I must say that I felt in refuge with being with Hojo. It's just the two of us, three of them, two of us, and we chatted. What I came to believe leaving that meeting was a reaffirmation of my vows, of the way that I have been taught about the meaning of mokurai. And as a result of that, I feel much more energized, I guess would be a good way. So for me, for our Falmouth Soto Zen Sangha, for the wayfinding, for the change, all of this comes down to conditions and variables. These conditions and variables arrive at the speed of light and last only fleetingly and merge, transform into something else. Something may have left, something may have arrived. But each moment, as we know in our practice, is a brand new configuration of moment. Founders Month, for me, is a time to remember all of that and a time to be grateful. Gratitude is something we talk about in a general way and appreciation in a general way, but every once in a while it kind of seeps out. And in Gasho, we say, thank you. So Founders Month for me may be a 3 Gasho bowing month. And as a result of that, I think all of us are served better for it, no matter what change we may be going through at the time. Gasho. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions, Hojo, Fusatsu, if you wish.
Definitely. And Sangha, please, inside the Zendo or online, if you have questions or comments for Sensei Sangaku, please come off of mute and just start talking your questions and comments. Sangaku, just a quick note. Thank you so much, as always, for your insight, your wisdom. It is Founders Month, and we're so grateful to have you share your information about your Sangha. It always brings things back into view for us to be able to see the full view of the lineage. And we are so grateful for yourself and Hojo Sensei for continuing to be the spark that holds that for us all. So we're looking forward to continued education and knowledge about that from our senior teachers. But with that being said, everyone, please welcome your questions, your comments. I'm going to move the mic inside so folks here can have an opportunity, but please do share and come off with me. Hojo Sensei, any initial comments?
No, I'm looking forward to, it was a wonderful talk, I thought. I think Sangaku may be giving me a little too much credit. We've had an awful lot of help in doing what we've done here. Literally hundreds, thousands of people have come through the center since our foundation, our incorporation in 1977. We're approaching 50 years in continuous operation. So in that time, I don't know how to do the math, but you would have, literally hundreds of people per month coming through, sometimes the same people coming through again. But if you do the math, you'll see it's, we sort of measure our success, such as it is, by the number of people that we serve. And so I think all in all, it's a pretty good track record that we've had. And Sangaku was an improvement on the approach and what do you do, when you want to start up a group? we have a new startup happening in Birmingham now, and we have them come along from time to time. So fortunately, because of the trails that Sangaku blazed on the original frontier, I plugged my book by accident there. You know, it's a lot easier to do. It's a lot clearer, and how to avoid the pitfalls has become even more clear over the years. So we're the 7-Eleven of Zen. You know, we're convenience store, one on every corner. We're not the Walmart, a big monastery that you have to climb the mountain to get to. So we try to keep that kind of humble perspective in mind as to what we're doing. We're just simply, I think, meeting the demand for Zen, that growth is not itself a value or an objective for us.
Yes, Ketsuryu.
Good morning. Sangaku Sensei, could you say a little more about, briefly, how you discuss Jukai and the precepts with new people?
Well, I talk about you can do whatever you want as long as you want in our Sangha and never have to take Jukai. Jukai is simply an acknowledgement that you take, a personal acknowledgement that you say, I want to say out loud to the public that I am taking vows in Buddhism. That is a personal decision. A vow is a vow. You make a religious vow, a marital vow, and I would say you make a vow as a member of the federal government and as a in the military, and as you make a vow as a new citizen. So we talk about that, what that means, and then I lay out for them. Each one has a particular learning path starting in February through October with Jukai in November. And it is identified primarily through similar things to what we have in somewhat along the disciple line in the Silence Under Order, but we have them make sure that they read certain books and that they are able to recite our sutras that we use in our service, and that they have Dokusan, and that they talk with other people who have taken Jukai. And as a result of this, once they have taken Jukai, I think they have a pretty good understanding of why maybe they did. And up until this year, by the way, this will be the first year that Hojo hasn't presided. I asked him to preside last year because Moko completed her discipleship training. And so this is quite something. It is a joyous event for us, and we utilize it well, I hope. Anything more specific, Katsuru?
No, that's a good outline, and
I'd be
I
glad
can
to
talk with you for
share any of
more
that with you
detail.
if you wish.
Thank you.
Now, Katsuryu's group in Northern California is the other new startup, but he's not exactly a startup. He was actually a disciple of Matsuoka Roshi back in Long Beach.
Bellevue, Washington.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bellevue, Washington. That's Northern California. That's not Northern California.
Northern California is southern Washington.
Yeah. One place some people would like to build a wall.
Any takers in the Zendo? Again, we'll have Jukai. Actually, this is such a timely conversation. We have Jukai next Sunday, and I'm excited to. I'm hoping I know who the person in Falmouth is. That I'm glad you mentioned that date. So I'm going to try to show up for that person. No names mentioned there. But again, any questions in the Zendo? Okay. All right.
Don't make us call you out. Thank you. Newcomers in the Zendo, newcomers today, relative newcomers, we'd appreciate your questions and see what kind of, as a newcomer, what kind of questions are coming up for you, impressions and so on.
No pressure.
All perfectly clear.
John?
Sangaku, thank you for your presentation this morning. It was much appreciated. I thought I understood you to say that you're taking a step back in relationship to your Zendo, maybe possibly the teaching leadership. Could you say a little more about that if that's true, please?
John, there are a couple of different ways in which you can operate a sitting group or a Sangha or center. And until you have a transmitted priest, you do not have a guiding teacher on site. So once you're transmitted, you become the guiding teacher of we continue to use Sangha because we don't have a permanent physical location, although we consider ourselves kind of nomadic in that regard. Practice leader, I was doing everything, essentially. So I was doing everything and teaching too for 10 years, as well as going through my practice path. And also, John, I got older during that time. I have gotten to an age. So 3 years ago, I announced that I would be stepping down as practice leader if I became transmitted. So the practice leader, who happens to be in my screen just above you, Moko Nancy Sherwood, essentially is the chief operating officer, if you will. She's in charge of all of the nuts and bolts, and I'm in charge of the teaching, and then we get together on a weekly basis to talk about the integration of those two things. So it is a interconnected relationship that we find most helpful.
Moko's hand is up.
These two are not interchangeable. Guiding teacher and practice leader are not interchangeable. Guiding teacher refers to a person who has been transmitted and is in the Zendo. You can be a teacher and be given permission to teach, but guiding teacher refers back to the person who has the brown robe, essentially. Practice leader, I have found, is becoming more important to me primarily as I age, but also I think just since we do a lot of outreach, there's a lot of coordination, scheduling, those kind of things. So far so good.
And since we have Sensei Sangaku, are you okay? I'm going to actually call Moko out. Can she speak a little bit about that role and transition, since it's a new role? Is it okay to have her just chat a little bit about that?
If she wishes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Fasats and Hojo. Always wonderful to see you and to hear you. And I so appreciate your guidance. And of course, Sensei Sangaku. I always learn from you, Sensei, and I appreciate that. I'm just learning the role of practice leader, really, and Sensei is guiding me gently. He still does quite a bit as I learn to take more responsibility. And we are learning to work together. When I first became practice leader, I discovered I had a job, a full-time job, and I was a little taken aback. But I'm getting used to it, and I'm growing as a result of this position. I watch my ego every time I turn around, and which is good for me. And I do things that I'm not comfortable doing, and I have to give up things that I am comfortable doing, and that's okay. We are expanding our outreach, which I think is what I am comfortable with that. That is a role in which that is a passion, actually a passion for me. And so we are going in that direction. And we're getting better known in the community as a result. I did not know what I was getting into, to tell you the truth. And I stumble. I definitely stumble. And one of the wonderful things that Sangha has taught me, and I'll be forever grateful for this, is that it's okay to make a mistake. Like, mistakes happen often, and it's okay. And that is a huge, huge growth for me. The other thing that I've become very aware of also is the gift of ancestors. I listened to a longtime Zen practitioner speak about her reciting the ancestors before her transmission ceremony. And she had one of those, I don't know what you call them, those moments of clarity, maybe. You know, those I don't know what you call them, those out-of-body experiences at the end of her reciting the women ancestors. And I have to say that when I was just with my grandchildren yesterday, 2 hockey games, freezing later, and one of my granddaughters just looked exactly like my daughter on the rink. You know, and the transmission of things throughout families, you know, my grandparents, their grandparents, it's all the same. It's all the same. And when I gave my talk about women ancestors during the retreat, it was like, without Mahapajapati, I may not be here, and you may not be here either. And so the more I learn to appreciate. So thank you so much.
Just a quick addition, Moko also heads the project on women ancestors, which we're going to be doing a special thing on coming up on the 17th, I believe, in our Sangha. So certainly those who would like to attend.
Thank you, Mokyo, for sharing. And I think this is Fusata in Atlanta. I just wanted to say a few comments here, but I really feel like that's the strength of the order, is that as the affiliates are seated, you know, we learn from each other. We learn what works and what doesn't work, and we share, and it's not always easy, and it's just like any family, it can get messy sometimes, but I think that's so much opportunity in those, like you said, Mokyo, it's the opportunity to make the mistakes and lovingly be, you know, corrected and informed by the decisions that we see in the feedback. So I am so grateful for Falmouth for really being able to share with us the journey that you have and the progression that you're making, and hopefully being able to feed that back to the other affiliates to be able to share in your strengths and allow us to be able to utilize some of that information in our own practice. God show to both. Falmouth, thank you so much.
Yeah, it should be said, for those who don't understand, sorry, Mokuo, just a brief comment. STO was established for that purpose exactly, to be a service organization to the affiliate practice leaders. So really, in terms of, if you want a hierarchy of management, the Practice Leaders Forum, which is currently headed up by Katsuryu Bill Cooper, is really sort of the driving force behind STO. The board of directors and all of those of us who serve the larger Sangha are responsive to the practice leaders. So anybody has any qualms about starting a group or becoming a practice leader, we're here to support that effort rather than to tell you how to do it exactly or tell you what you should do. So it's a ground up organization, and the STO faculty is meant to backstop you in your efforts. So just recently, Scott, who's on call tonight, he's in Arkansas, and it turned out that Shorty John Bradley, who was in Austin when I was there in 2007 for my ongo with Serene Barbara Cohn of the Suzuki lineage, Shorty transferred to Okamoto Roshi in Bloomington, and I was invited to his Zaike Tokudor ordination ceremony in that lineage where he took on a new name. We share the Okamura lineage, as most of you know, because he also did my formal ceremonies. But Scott is a Lone Ranger out there in Arkansas, Little Rock. But as it turns out, Shorty is also north of him and visits a town only 15 minutes or so away. So they're able to meet, they've already met, and so Shorty could implement or be part of his training and ceremonies. Shorty could do the local placing of the vestments and so forth, and I could still give the precepts over the internet. So our model is to take advantage of all of the current technology and media in order to make Zazen available, or Zazen practice and Zen practice available on a countrywide basis as much as possible. And we utilize the network of affiliates, including those in the Okamura lineage, in order to make that happen or meet the demand for it.
And Mokyo, I saw your hand back up, I'm sorry.
Well, I just forgot a part. You know, it was really important for me to get to know people in the Silent Thunder Order. And I had two mentors when I was studying for discipleship, which was really important. It was Kuo-san and Sensei Zenku, to be able to talk with them and just to get their points of view of things, and just to be able to be on a committee and get to know people and see how they conduct themselves. I think that's was really important for me. The more people I know, or the more relationships that I have with other people, the more helpful it is. So thank you.
I would love a question from someone in Atlanta. I could hear some good Atlanta accents.
We have some.
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for this talk, and I really appreciate learning more about the affiliates and overall the Silent Thunder Order. I'm learning so much this year, and I have to say I perked up to attention when you started discussing the themes of your talk, change and leaving home. Both of those have been very central to my own life this year. Just this year, I've gotten divorced, purchased a house, had a child leave home. A second child will be leaving home here in about 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully. And I've found this Sangha. And next week I will be taking Jukai. So it's just this amazing culmination. I'm so grateful for this Sangha and the learning that I'm having and the return to the cushion after about a 5-year hiatus. So I just want to express my gratitude for this theme of leaving home, and I will be holding that close over the next week or so. Gosh,
And may I ask your name?
Lindy.
Hi, good to meet you, and congratulations on Jukai. Just a comment on leaving home. It's a teaching. And the leaving and home, don't get confused. What is home is the moment. That's all we have. And when we feel that we're seeing the moment clearly and doing what we think needs to be done, even if it's not easy, there's a certain sense of uprightness in that. So we leave home every moment and go to a new home, which is the next moment. The continuity in this, as you pointed out, is that you can be leaving one place and being in another at the same time. So people are leaving and coming and going, but in our study, we tend to think of Tathagata is that things don't come and go, our perspectives come and go. And when we have a certain perspective on the idea of coming and going, it changes the meaning of leaving and arriving. So I applaud you in coming back after 5 years and hope things go well with Jukai. And thank you for commenting.
It's worth pointing out that coming and going has traditionally meant living and dying, or the transition from life to death as well. And so the Buddhist attitude is the one that's just been expressed, even including life and death.
Die and rebirth on the cushion.
I can't believe my Dharma brother, Shikaku, has not been led to speak on Uji, since that's one of his favorite things to do. You don't have to say anything, but I just have to mention that. Shikaku.
The first year of Zen, 4 years ago, I had many questions and many things to say, though I have almost no things to say now.
Gotcha. And again, a quick time check. We got about 10 minutes, and last call for questions. Sure, yeah. It's really good. It's a, you don't, yeah, you should be able to, yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael. It's actually my first time coming to not here, but to Sunday service specifically.
Welcome.
And I appreciate the talk and being able to hear these words this morning. And in this talk, we talked a lot about change and respect to the Sangha or Zen communities throughout the past years. I was curious if I could hear a couple words on change outside of these communities, and as a Zen practitioner, confronting change not just with our Sangha, but when you're out, unable to have that, I guess, contact with that Sangha, kind of more so on your own, confronting these aspects of change.
Could you speak up just a little bit? I'm noticing some squinting eyes. These are some old guys here.
It sounds really good.
Oh, is it good? Okay.
I think I get the gist of your question. Change outside of the Sangha. Change
Yeah.
itself. May I ask you what you think change is?
Um,
Not types of change, but change itself.
mhm. I guess in the larger aspect of not just life transformations, but aging and kind of those, I guess, just aging through life, and everything that comes with this impermanent quality of life of I guess in the sense that time always moves on. There's always change, occurring.
Well, if that's the case, it's called impermanence. Impermanence and interconnectivity. Interconnectivity, I feel, is something we have to embrace impermanence. In other words, if others hadn't been there before you, they wouldn't be able to say, I too was there. It's like the tombstone that reads, a guy looking at the tombstone that says, as you see me, I once was like you. As you are now, you will be like me too. So change, impermanence is, when looked at through interconnectivity, it has a slightly different meaning. It is not nihilistic. It is simply what is occurring in a moment. And from that perspective, I believe we get a sense of continuity. So when we talk about ancestors, essentially we are ancestors in waiting. So as we talk about ancestors, we're talking about people that have gone through what you've gone through. And as a result of that, you're looking back at them and learning. In Dead Poet Society, in the movie in particular, it was not remorseful. It was very, very direct in the sense that change is constantly occurring, which and Hojo speaks a little bit to that. If change is constant, how is it impermanent? And it's impermanent because it's changing. Change is not the status quo. And then the other thing, and I think this is to your point, we say change is small, or change is medium, or change is large, or we have some measure of change. And when we expect something to change in a certain amount or so forth, we get into some issues. But I think you're at the right place and are asking the right questions. And as the more time you spend on the cushion, be interesting to hear the next time we meet what your question will be. So please continue your practice.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. What is your sense that it's different outside of the Sangha?
I'm sorry.
I have a question about your question. What is your sense that it's different outside of the Sangha? Is it the sense that there's not like an agreed upon set of rules to mitigate change? It's just a free for all?
It was more in the sense of less about, I guess, institutional change, like me moving to a different state.
I'm sorry, I'm losing you.
It was more or less in regards to
Yeah.
the sense of me moving to a different state, or these institutional changes of people coming into this specific Sangha or leaving this specific Sangha, and less oriented around that kind of,
Okay.
I guess, communal or institutional aspect, and more of a question of change as in regards to, I guess, the self change of not our community, but the individual as he's aging or she's aging, or the individual as to say, every second you are living, but to live, you are getting closer to death. So coming in regards to, and confronting that kind of change and how to confront it and how to, I guess, grasp it.
The ultimate question is, what is the meaning of birth and death? Great is the meaning of birth and death. First of all, we change our thinking about that through a variety of ways. And we change it constantly. This is called being. Being is going through the moment as it presents itself time after time after time. One variation on the big number that Dogen uses to define moment is that we do that probably 25,000 times a day. We arrive at a moment that is different from the moment we just left. I want to say there is no difference. Change simply is change. It's our perspective, our experience that we've had. The experience that we have had changes our perception of change. Practice essentially is putting ourselves in the position to expose ourselves to our understanding of self. And then as we go through this process, we come to realize it's not what we think. And we are simply experiencing this time and time again. And when we experience with others in Sangha, or you experience it with friends, or have a sense of loving relationships with others, that is extremely helpful. And we find, for example, that to deal with impermanence, we have to have interconnectivity. The idea of a wedding and a funeral are basically the same. It is a celebration of life. So when we talk about, when you talk about, or I talk about change, that gives us an opportunity to know more about each other and what we mean by that. And kind of like leaning in to, you know, let's talk more about that. Can we talk more about that? I remember back when I was teaching management, there was a phrase a lot of people were using, said the only person that hates change is babies. Infants. Had something to do with pooping, changing diapers. They didn't mind it. We minded it much more than they did.
Awesome. Any last call for any questions or comments? Or I will hand it back over to Sensei Sangaku for his closing comments or thoughts.
So thank you all very much. I enjoyed being here this morning. It's a beautiful day on the Cape, and spend some time with you is most helpful. So I encourage all of you to use this month well. Have it as a time to think, a time to appreciate, time to be grateful. And as always, continue your practice, and may you be well.
Sensei Sangaku and the Foundless Sangha, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to commune with you. And your sharing and your wisdom, as always. We look forward to our continued efforts, and we wish you much success in your efforts as you're outreaching and evolving your Sangha. So we look forward to hearing back about your efforts and sharing as well. So a big gasho to Sensei and Mukyo. Thank you so much for sharing.
Gasho.
And before we close, as always, thank you so much for your presence and your practice. We would not be here without the efforts of our ancestors, and of course, as you contributing to us. So as always, if you find value in the things that we do, we ask that you consider gratitude for those who are already consistent contributors. But if you're not, we ask that you could maybe consider doing that as well. We do have upcoming programs. Next Sunday, we will be having our Jukai ceremony. We will go have our normal service, and then at 10:30, we will jump right into our Jukai services. There'll be information online about that. Those folks that have talked to Sensei, Hojo Sensei, and are going to be initiated will be more information about that via email next week. And we, as always, have daily practice opportunities in our morning and evening sits, our book clubs, and again, our Sunday services. So we invite you to please check out the website, find out more information, as well as also our affiliates have programming going on. So please check out that opportunity as well. Hojo Sensei, is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, I think we have a pretty good class of 2021. I think we have 8 or 10 people.
Like 8 right now. We'll see.
8 people signed up. So it should be an interesting ceremony.
Awesome.
And please tune in to welcome the new class if you are not going through Jukai yourself.
And I see some new people, Jeff, Lizzie, Laura Lee, Joe, Scott. Again, we want to virtually welcome you as well. We're so glad to see you and hope that you'll continue to come. So welcome. And without further ado, what we'll do is do our closing Dharma verses. And I'll ring the bell since I have it. Again, Gasso, everyone, thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon.
Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way, unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way, unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Be numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it.
I show everyone.
Happy Founders Month.
Thank you.
And everybody have a safe rest of the day. Enjoy the beautiful day outside. That's all, everyone.
Let's get your cup if you're all finished.